Who are you? Why are you here? What is your mission? As you ask these questions and ponder your own life, allow your heart and mind to become open. You are about to take a journey beyond your own expectations. From the whisperings of government agencies and the world of secret and sealed records, from a life of extreme clairvoyance, the author of A Light in the Dark, a hypnotherapist and breath practitioner, powerful energy healer, a master of dream inception and astral travel, sought after by secret agencies and hidden groups for her ability to remote view and her unique talent to combine healing modalities with light to ignite each individual flame, bringing those who receive to a remembrance of who they are. Introducing today's host, seeking to reveal the dark places and ultimately to enhance the light, Aurelia T. Helios, the Lady of Light.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. This is Aurelia, and I don't even know where to start. I'm so excited. I've done some other shows, and I am excited to be part of American Freedom Radio. I'm just going to give a quick backstory, as quick as I can. I am the mother of 15 children, and that's the thing that I'm most proud of. I have 7 adopted children and 8 birth children. Me and my husband do. We've been married 20 years. And because my husband was in the military and was a helicopter pilot and had done many odd jobs for the military. And through this, I was noticed / picked up, and they started to want to use me, this specific group, to do some odd jobs for them, some missions, and use my psychic capacities to do so. And it is through this that I started waking up to some of my own gifts and strengths and remembering them. And for a while, I was an analyst and a remote viewer, and then I was picked up by some other groups. And through this, I learned quite a bit. And the main thing that I learned and that I want to share and I'm willing to open my mouth about is that we as humans are very powerful. And this is the thing that is trying to be kept from this human race, is that we are powerful, and that powerful in a way that is beyond most of people's comprehension. And so through these shows, I'm going to be bringing guests on, people that have woken up or that are remembering, and in hopes to be able to share this knowledge and wisdom. And when I say to ignite the light by igniting, or enhance the light by igniting each individual flame, I mean that each of us has inside of us the place where we know all things. Some people call it the Akashic Record. And in this place, we can remember who we are and why we came. Today, my guest, Steve Nobel, is a brilliant mind, and I'm so excited to have him. He is going to be able to expound on a lot of the beliefs that I have. And again, it seems to be that both of our desires are similar, and that is to reminding people who they are. And so let me tell just a little bit about him. And of course, really quick, if any of you want to know more about me, you can go to my website, which is enhancethelight.com. And you can always email me at aurelia@enhancethelight.com. And my husband and I have a work that we do called Warrior Healing, and we take people on. So if you want to make an appointment, you can do that from there as well. So back to Steve Nobel. He is an author, a book mentor, and a coach. He's the author of 5 nonfiction books. He was a director of Alternatives, a nonprofit events organization based in St. James Church, Piccadilly, London, where he worked on hosting many well-known spiritual authors for many years. He is the creator of Soul Matrix Healing. He lives in London and is a father and a grandfather. For more information, go to his website, thesoulmatrix.com. Hi, Steve. Welcome.
Hi, Aurelia. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I don't even know where to start, except is there anything before that you want anyone to know about you so we can send them there?
Okay. Well, a little bit about my background, I suppose, briefly would be I was born in a kind of averagely neurotic British family, and kind of grew up interested in a number of weird things. I kind of got, but by the teenage years, I kind of got the message I should play and get serious. So I went into the world of finance in the City of London, and just tried to be normal, but that didn't last for long. I got married young, and by the age of 30, I think coming up to 33, that kind of magical year, I had a kind of spiritual jolt, which kind of turned my life upside down, so set me on a new path. And yeah, I mean, I've been on this kind of journey, I suppose, for, 25 years, and it never ceases to amaze me. I thought I got to a point where I kind of heard it all and knew it all, but now another whole vista is opening up of exploration.
I love that spiritual jolt. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were talking briefly. I mostly just had read some of your stuff and was felt like we had very similar beliefs and thoughts. And then when we started talking, it was like, that feeling talking with someone, you just can't decide which thing to talk about because there's so much. But okay,
Yeah.
So one thing, maybe place to start is, first of all, just another little thing about me is that when I was younger, I was pretty much, and still I like to claim to be kind of the girl next door type, like just kind of reserved in some ways, and kind of, I say innocent and sweet in some ways, and I being exposed to such intense groups was something I didn't search for. I wasn't one of those going to go look for something interesting. They found me. And for a while, I had to work through a lot of the feelings I had, the fact that these people had targeted me. And I feel I'm definitely, more clear than I was. But I loved the way you, and so maybe talk a little about what you believe is happening with specific groups who are in control.
Yeah. So I think I was kind of in the love and light world for a while, and it really was 9/11 was a kind of another jolt that woke me up. I remember walking down the high street just before 9/11 and just having this feeling of shock in my body, feeling something has happened. A bit like Star Wars, the tremor in the Force, something's happened somewhere. The film The Planet, but here it was those planes were about to hit the Twin Towers. So I had that feeling, and later in the day, I remember seeing these planes hitting and thinking, oh my gosh. And then, as the weeks afterwards, the stories kind of unfolded about, who was supposedly responsible and all the rest of it. And I had this very strong intuition that something wasn't quite right about it. So that was my start of, after having such a long head down the love and light route, I kind of started looking at the emerging conspiracy theory field, which 9/11 for me was the beginning of it. And I began to see there was something else at play which I hadn't realized before. I've been so focused on kind of light groups and ascended masters and angelic forces and spirit guides and the higher self and DNA activation, all these things. And suddenly I thought there's something else going on. And I remember when I was younger, I read a channel. I'm not sure if your audience have heard of this person called Alice Bailey. She was one of the kind of an early channel in the 1920s. She was a British aristocratic woman who went to America and then got contacted by spiritual forces and started channeling. And one of the things she said was, on this planet, there's the light lodge and the dark lodge. And I remember thinking, I've got no idea by the dark lodge. But after 9/11, I started looking at that. And I suppose over the years, I like a lot of people. I think I dived a bit too deep into all of that, and I saw you can go so deep, and there's a lot of misinformation also in there that can be very confusing. So I kind of pulled out of that and took a step back and looked at it, and I saw, yes, there are light forces operating on the earth, and there are dark forces operating on the earth, and this is what's been going on for a while now. We're in this great transition period where it's becoming more obvious, and I kind of believe that a lot of the prophecies that a lot of religious paths have been talking about. In the Bible, for example, in the book of Revelations, there's this kind of whole light, dark battle playing out that leads to a new Jerusalem being born. And I think we're in this period of this kind of battle, and a lot of that battle is on the earth, but it's also in the inner planes as light and dark forces clash. But I don't want to be frightening your readers, because we're not going to be having an Armageddon, I don't believe. I think the decision's been made not to have that. It's going to be a very different path. But the forces which have been operating on the earth for a long time have been really gathering around all the power kind of circuits, like money, the financial systems, military industrial complex, corporate world, government. Anywhere where there's power, money, energy, you'll find these groups. Now, these groups are mostly hidden. And a lot of the conspiracy theorists say the Illuminati has a number of wealthy families, which I think is probably true. But also behind that, I also believe there are extraterrestrial forces operating on the earth, and aligning themselves with governments and, giving technology and driving some of the stuff that's going on the earth. There are a number of extraterrestrial groups interested in this planet right now. A lot of them are, you could say, positively oriented, but some of the ones which are embedded here in this kind of last period of what we could call a dark age on Earth, where spiritual light has been kind of very hard to kind of anchor here. Those forces are embedded in a lot of the major governments. And I think, my friends across the pond who might be kind of feeling very, America is the land of the brave and free, but actually I do believe the Illuminati and these darker forces have been quite embedded there. And when I speak to light workers about this and they get very upset, I was a friend of mine recently. He was very kind of shocked to hear me say these things. And I said, well, look, just look at what's going on. Look at what the government's doing, the kind of endless war that's been going on after 9/11, the kind of cover-ups. And you'll see, are light groups really behind those things, do you think? Do you think positive ET groups are going to say, let's invade Afghanistan or Iraq and kill the, terrorists or whatever? That doesn't make any sense to me. So I think the dark on the planet looks as if it's getting worse, but actually I don't believe it's getting worse. I think it's becoming revealed for the first time the last kind of decade or so. These darker forces are being revealed. They're being cleared out. They're not getting stronger. They look dangerous because they are dangerous. They're a bit like a cornered animal that realizes the game's up. But, if you've got a cornered tiger in the corner, still be very careful. So that's what I kind of think about these dark groups. They're nothing to be frightened of. The game has already been decided that they're going to leave the planet. It's really how that plays out over the next few years. And yes, there's still going to be wars and stuff going on because they still have a certain amount of power. But where we're heading for is a very different world. But, before we get there, we've got to go through this light, dark storm, you could say.
Right. I love that. So, like you said earlier when we were talking, there's only a handful of people who are actually willing to start opening their eyes and looking at some of the things that are going on. The rest are busy and consumed with their world. And that does become frustrating for some of us that are like, but there's more. When I expose or try to expose these groups, at times I've received kind of I have a shield, what I call a light shield, but I almost like a penetrating on the outside of it force that's trying to stop me. And like you said, it's serious. It is serious, but it's not something to be afraid of. And that's where I think people start becoming or wanting to be in a type of denial. I mean, people sense it, and they sense that what they perceive to be true may not be true, but at the same time, the fear is part of the whole problem that keeps being fed to keep these people in control. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think the kind of, these darker groups are super wealthy, and they are very super wealthy. You're talking trillions and trillions of dollars. They own a lot of the media, and so they can kind of keep a lot of low vibrational stuff going, really. And I think that the reason why a lot of people are frightened of the dark is because when people start waking up to the light, you could say, or a spiritual awakening, the first thing they do is they go through a period of kind of clearing out the old the old negativity, the old I'm not good enough, the old inner critical stuff, the old kind of limiting beliefs. They go through all this embracing more light, going, oh wow, I feel more relaxed, this is amazing. And they're going to work and they're raising families and they're meditating. So they're going through this whole period of, can be very confusing for some people. The next phase, I believe, for a lot of light workers is they kind of start getting embedded in light. They get more deeper into a practice. They feel comfortable with it. But there can be a kind of phase of really denying anything that's so-called negative, or, they just want to embrace this love light because it feels so good. And that's a necessary period. But there comes a point where there's a kind of spiritual maturity, I think, where people feel strong enough in the light, strong enough in this kind of self-love or these new frequencies, that they can actually then, if they're willing, to turn and look and go, what's actually going on in the world, and you can look at the dark in a new way. It's not that the dark is frightening, but you have the kind of resources to know that you can clear stuff, you can clear energy out of your body. There's various protection things you can do. And actually it's really kind of being embedded in the belief that I live in a safe universe. Even though the world may seem dangerous in places, the reality I create for myself is a safe one. And so you can look very safely at this dark mirror of what's going on and really start embracing, you could say from a Jungian point of view, shadow, where in me do I feel there's these kind of energies, when we're really talking about from a multi-dimensional point of view, because we've lived many lifetimes, I believe, and some of those lifetimes are not all love and light. So it's really embracing those things as well.
Yes, I agree with you. I think we're definitely in line with each other. Some people learn from different semantics, and I'm always looking for new words to kind of help translate to those that are kind of partially waking up or partially looking at things and noticing things. And one thing that one of the groups I worked with exposed to me the Akashic record, and the person that exposed it got in trouble from the other members, which was funny. Then I went and studied the Akashic, and then I realized I could tap into it quite easily. And so my desire is to, in one of the things I want to do is share with everybody, they have that power to tap into the knowing and the Akashic. And one way to explain it, there's a book called Spiritual Journeys by Howard Beatty, and he says, the Akashic record can be considered to be the complete awareness of the one infinite creator who is constantly receiving and recording all the information and experiences within creation and aware of everything and everyone that has been created, as well as the motives, principles, actions involved in their creation. And this kind of blows people's minds. It blows mine on one level, but that the more you do, I don't know if you relate to this, Steve, but the more I've connected to this knowing, the more I want to know. Do you feel that?
Yeah, I think, you touched on a very important point, because I think the Akashic record is so crucial. I mean, it's one of the things I touch upon in the soul matrix healing, because this whole thing about the light dark mirror is that once we start looking at the dark, we can start going, and the light really, we can start going into the Akashic record, and we can start clearing whole swathes of karmic stuff. And one of the things a lot of spiritual teachers are talking about now is something called kind of karmic dispensation. So there's various things like the violet ray and the violet silver ray and diamond white ray and all these things you can call upon. There are various methodologies. You can go in the Akashic and look at a whole band of stuff that needs to be cleared. We don't have to kind of work through it in the old slow way, which is the old 3D way of, let's say I've got a pattern of being very greedy and selfish. I don't have to kind of experience lifetimes of, suffering the other end of that, which kind of balances out my point of view. Nowadays we can clear that out and we can kind of grow really fast. And in this period we're being called to kind of grow up and clear this old stuff. And the Akashic, people like yourself are helping people to go into the Akashic, take power and responsibility. And it's not that some outside agency has to do it for them. Once you know the methodology and the tools, you can go in and start doing it for yourself. I mean, 20 odd years ago, I hit a very dark patch, and a girlfriend took me to a healer and said, she can help. And I sat there. It was a method from America called spiritual response therapy, actually 20 odd years ago. And the woman just cleared something in me, and I was just amazed by swinging a pendulum and just looking at some charts. She can clear some really deep terrors and fears I was having at the time. And I tested it out to make sure, well, is it genuine? And I kind of tested out the scenario, and the fear or terror, which was there before, was completely gone. So I decided to train in that methodology and other ones like that, because I realized, well, I don't need to do 20 years of psychotherapy, and go back to when I was 5 years old, that kind of thing. I can clear it, and actually I can move on, and I can embrace a different reality, one of more light, possibility, hope, courage, etc. You see what I mean?
Yes.
Whereas I'm not blocked anymore by things that I don't know. Why am I blocked? I don't know. Now I can find out, and we can go in and clear this stuff. So there are a lot of different systems, like what you're doing. It sounds great. I know I've been doing it for about 20 years now on myself and with clients. And I find, a lot more people, I think, in the years ahead are going to be looking for people like yourself and me to say, hey, help. Can you help me, clear this stuff quickly so I can kind of wake up and do what I'm here to do?
Yes, I love that. So, in the book that I wrote, A Light in the Dark, the Field Guide, which is free at my website for those that want to download it, it talks about this thing called the light core. And if you put your hand on your heart, you place your hand there, you might feel it. It's deeply connected to your heart, and it is connected to your brain, mind, intellect. It's connected there. Everything runs through. As you become increasingly intuitive, you will feel this place burn within you as you make choices. Every day we're given opportunities to increase and decrease the brightness of this light core. So one of my passions is to try to help people get connected to that light core. And, when you say the word Akashic or Kashik, whatever, it's like, well, what's that? That's way out there. And what I love about the concept of light core is that it's within you, and it's right connected to you. And one of my beliefs or things that I've come to through my own learning, and I'm always excited to learn something new as well and advance that, but is that not only is there in this current state in our dimension a matrix of deception is what I call it, and some call it the ego and so on. Each of us has our own matrix of deception inside of us that we have either DNA or whatever, and some call it lower frequency. That's exactly what it is. It's a lower frequency. And what we want to do is to bring ourselves to those higher states so that we have a direct connection to the ultimate light source. And so it's like a well of running water through us. Well, when we're little, something happens and we fracture, and that piece is now broken, and we walk around with this ego speaking. And many of us are hungry to be in that state always, but we don't quite know how, because the habits that we create out of those small deceptions here and there that accumulate become so difficult to break through that it's hard to not give up. And because it is a true matrix and it's easy to get caught in, it is something that I think many of us that have kind of started to see outside of it, the light comes in, are now wanting to know what we can do to help other people. And you have come up with some things with this soul matrix thing. So go on and talk about that.
Yeah, well, I'll comment on what you said first. First of all, I think that the kind of darker groups got wind of the rise in frequency on the planet around the millennium, and decided on a plan to keep the frequencies low. I mean, 9/11 was that plan. That plan was about low frequency and also about, grabbing resources and being more strategic as well, of course. So there was that. The light core you talk about, I think, is great, that this light core is waking up in people. There are different ways of looking at it. There's the ancient way, like the ancient Taoists used to call it the three dantians, where there was a kind of center in the brain, center in the heart, center in the belly. They're all kind of connected. That's a kind of ancient view, which is a very powerful, a lot of this kind of Qigong, martial arts use that kind of system. But there's another system that I like is as this awakening is happening now, people are moving, I believe, in this core from a 7 chakra system, from the spine up to the top of the head, base of spine to top of the head, to a 12 chakra system. So the core is expanding and becoming more multidimensional, which is giving people access to Akashic records, which is beyond the 7 chakras.
Wait a minute. Sorry. I have to interrupt you. Wait. This is news. I love new information. Wait. So it's going from a 7 to a 12. Why?
Yeah.
Wait.
Well, 7 gives us access. Imagine like there's a radio frequency band, and for a long time we've had these 7 in the body. But actually, most people have been operating on the first three. Base, sacral, and solar plexus mostly. They've been more fully awakened. The heart to some extent, but not completely. But now there's a period of people waking up to the kind of higher chakras, throat, third eye, crown, and there are all kinds of other chakras opening up in the body.
I do know those, what you're talking about now. I'm just like, yes, okay, keep going.
So yeah, the other ones which are expanding, there's one beneath the feet called the Earth Star, and that's got a kind of polar twin above the head called the Soul Star. So that's another 2 chakras that have opened up. That's kind of expanding our old frequency. And there are other chakras operating above the head, various names, stellar chakra, universal chakra. There's very different names for it. But these chakras allowing this whole thing about the Akashic record now is becoming online as more people open up to this 12 chakra system. Then there's lots of people Google 12 chakra system. You'll find lots of information on it. On my own website, you'll find on the blog, there's blog entries about it. So the inner light, this core is open and expanding. And one of the things the core is doing is there's a new frequencies in the earth itself. The core of the earth is what some people call ascending light. So there's a whole new grid of light forming in the earth. The old earth system is kind of shifting. So a lot of healers and light workers used to connect to the earth, and now are finding that the earth is shifting and it's not quite the same. So again, there's a lot of stuff on my website, a lot of meditation transmissions about connecting to what I call the crystal grid of the earth, which is a higher frequency in the earth. So there's light ascending. We're also being subjected to higher frequencies of light through the sun from the galactic center. So we're being bombarded with light, basically. The planet is being bombarded with light, which is why the kind of darker groups got wind of something's going up. We have to do something about this because it's a problem. If you're someone or group operating in secrecy, in fear, in all kinds of corrupt means, and the vibration starts increasing, that's a problem because suddenly things become more transparent. You can't do what you were doing before. People start becoming more aware and say, hey, what are you doing? Which is happening, when John Kennedy was assassinated, people mostly believed the official story, even though it was ridiculous. Right. Now, after 9/11, people are going, millions of people are questioning it. So there is a waking up, which is because of this rise in frequency. In terms of the ego, the old ego was running on 1, 2, 3 chakra, so there's kind of survival, sensual pleasure and emotion, and warrior fighting, will, the 3rd chakra. And you saw a lot of that playing out on the planet. But now, as the heart begins to open, there's higher frequencies of love opening. As the throat opens, there's higher frequencies of self-expression, but also the soul's true path is held in that chakra, the throat. As the third eye opens, there's access to other lifetimes. As the crown opens, there's higher access to the higher self. And then we start accessing these other frequencies, which is really the Akashic. And, you probably are accessing this without even knowing it. As soon as by talking about it, you must have that kind of access, really. So a lot of people, they might not know the kind of theory of it, but they're kind of accessing it anyway in their energy field. It's just kind of opening up for them. Mm-hmm. So the ego is shifting, and what's happening is in a lot of spiritual systems, people say the ego's bad. We have to kind of chase the ego, kill it. We want the soul is good, the higher self is good, the ego is bad. But this old system itself is shifting because the ego has to grow up inside of us. All the childish parts inside of us have to grow up. As more light comes in, those parts get shaken. Old traumas get shaken. The way the ego can be very inflexible, like I'm stubborn, I'm rebellious, I'm a pleaser, I'm a pusher. All these energies that we identify with get shaken up, and then we get confused, like, well, who am I then? Once all this light starts to come down, there's this confusion. I mean, I ran a workshop on Sunday and we did the transmission, and one of the person said, I don't know what's happening to me. I'm so confused. What's going on? And basically I said, light is moving in your body. We're not just kind of calling in rainbow unicorns. We're actually putting light in the cells of your body. And she was like, am I all right? Is it going to be okay? I'm like, it's all right. It's okay. Nothing's going to happen. The collective ego will wake up. I mean, we're seeing in a way that collective ego is kind of, if you look at, I mean, let's say America, because this, I guess, is where a lot of your listeners are from. If you look at the leadership, which are reflections of the collective ego, you had George Bush, then you had Obama, and then now you've got Trump. Now, Trump is an interesting character, right? He's kind of like, you look at him and think, is he a kind of adolescent, or what? As he's tweeting away, I read somewhere that he did a tweet and he wiped off billions of pounds of shares in some industrial military company, and it's kind of like really interesting. I think actually that Trump is going to shake things up because I don't believe he's actually part of the cabal or the Illuminati's plan. I think right. They really wanted Clinton. Clinton was embedded in that whole system. She knew how it worked.
Right. And
Trump is a kind of wild card. I think that the Illuminati groups are going to quickly try and control him.
Absolutely. You mean they're going to? They are.
Yeah.
And their favorite tool is the ego, and he's got one, so they can do it.
Yeah. Absolutely. So he's controllable, but he's still a bit of a wild card because I don't think he quite knows how the game's being played yet.
Right. And money, to him, he really has a belief money can do everything and anything. And the closer you get to this stuff, you realize that money does have power, but it's not the highest power.
Yeah, I don't think he really understands how government works yet. I remember reading in the paper he kind of phoned the British Prime Minister and said something like, hey, if you're ever over in town, drop in, And like in the British press, they're going, that's not how it's done. There are kind of efficient ways of inviting people. Huh?
It shakes it up a bit. I think that's kind of fun. The thing is, when you realize all this stuff we're talking about, this planet does start to become amusing, don't you think?
Oh, it's very amusing. I mean, of course, for some people, it's deadly serious. But the more you kind of step back and go, actually, everyone is all right. Even people going through a really hard time. There are very difficult zones on the earth, of course. And, there's war in Syria, and it's very tough, of course. But everyone, life is eternal. Those people have lots of spiritual help. Death is not the end. And so they're on their journey. And, it's not that I would laugh at situations like that, but there are a lot of things in the world that are definitely very amusing. And Trump is definitely one of those.
And I realize I say that from where I sit, where I have my needs taken care of. And there are many people who are suffering. And that is one of my ambitions and desires, to speak this so that we reach out and try to avoid that and try to assist in that effort to protect the innocent people that are there. I mean, that's my intention in trying to get people to wake up. One thing we were talking about earlier with the president, Obama and Clinton, it showed exactly what's going on. You talked that the divine feminine is rising. Well, both of them are masculine and extremely masculine, and that's not going to work. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the spiritual zone for, 25 years now, and I see that it's being led by the feminine energy. Most of the audience are women, although it's not reflected entirely in the authors and speakers I've seen. There are a lot of men still kind of there because, and there are a lot of great male teachers, of course, but it's the feminine spirit that's driving it. And I think the old patriarchal religions, which are very male-dominated, you've got Christianity, which has kind of pushed out the feminine long ago. It kind of censored the Bible, kicked out any of the kind of female figures like Mary Magdalene. We have to get rid of that, those people. Those kind of religions are being shaken. Even I think Islam has been shaken. There's a rise in the feminine power, even in countries like Iran, women, and in Saudi Arabia, women demanding, we want more rights. And of course, those kind of countries are very repressive for the feminine energies. But in Britain and America, you've had the feminine come up through, even in the gay rights movement, which has been, very feminine men or, women, very vocal, women that want more say. And the feminine energy really, of course, is in everyone.
Yeah,
And the feminine really,
that's the way I speak of it too, is that, I'm not talking about women. I said feminine. The divine feminine is rising, and I'm talking about in men and women.
Yeah. Well, I think that energy is really concerned about the planet, because, that energy is about planet, community, children, connection, whereas the masculine is about doing, producing, creating, linear. And really, I think what I believe is happening now is, the planet went through a matriarchy for many, thousands of years, and it swung the pendulum to patriarchy. And now the pendulum is being swung the other way, not to kind of go back to matriarchy, but to balance the energies. Where we're heading, I think, for the first time on the planet, maybe, is a kind of sacred alchemical marriage where the masculine and feminine are equally honored. They come together and they work in partnership in individuals and in nations, so that they don't act like divorced parents, that you might have two very capable figures, a masculine strong and a feminine strong, but this time they'll be working together, supporting each other rather than kind of at war with each other.
I like that, an alchemy.
Yeah.
It's true that I see it, when you see paths, because that's one of the gifts I have, is to see, and I see the same thing. It's going to continue to be in that state. It's not so much the liberal woman and the jerk man and all these things. It's more, each of us balancing within ourselves the masculine and feminine, and then co-creating with another masculine feminine. And it doesn't mean not to honor our gender. And I respect the honoring of gender, but it also means understanding that the spirit realm is truly a yin-yang thing. And so back to what little bit we were talking about the matrix of the brain and the mind. And like my husband and I have this company, Warrior Healing, and we have brought together the elements. We've brought together the masculine and feminine, and we're trying, what we've been doing, and we still are creating this, but we're practicing with quite a few people, is bringing together the earth, water, wind, fire, and, through breath, hypnosis, we say we unhypnotize. So we bring people back to their state through mental work, using things like oils and all these things. And what our goal is to get a modality or gather those modalities into one that is so brilliant and so fast and amazing that it's like you can't, and then train other people in this, but we won't have to spend years and years working on overcoming. And maybe that will be somebody's personal journey, and maybe that's important. But for those that would be ready, I want something that's more conducive to speed. There's a joke about me, and that is that I'd like to heal the planet in a week. And I do feel that. Like, why not? We're creators. Let's heal as many as we can and get people to remembering. What do you think would be a way that we could combine these modalities to help people wake up to their own matrix inside?
Okay, I think we're totally, working in parallel here, because I've created a synergy myself of, I trained in a number of different modalities, and I've kind of broken it down, I think, in terms of healing and this matrix, in terms of what I think of as the lower, middle, and upper healing. And for some people, let's say start with the middle. I've trained in things like NLP, coaching, conversational hypnosis, and voice dialogue, and these are all very kind of conversational things where shifting attitudes, shifting ideas, expanding beliefs, expanding perspective, that can be done, very simply through challenging, traditional coaching, NLP stuff. And for some people, that's the main thing that kind of opens them up or begins the journey. Then I look at the whole kind of Akashic clearing, which I think is the lower of working with things like spiritual response therapy and other things that I've done that clear these Akashic things, divine, these kind of dispensations I was talking about. We can actually clear whole swathes of lower stuff. And then there's the upper, which is like connection to higher self, connection to higher frequencies, opening this 12D chakra system, opening the core, connecting the circuit between kind of heaven and earth inside a person. and helping them wake up. And one of the things I've got on my website is a lot of things called transmissions, which are high frequency kind of meditations where people can just listen to them for free. I've got loads of them on the website. And so, you're doing your version of bringing all these things together, and I'm doing it in a different way. But I guess this is where we're going. We don't want to just have a reflexology or hypnosis. We want somewhere where a set of tools that's fluid, that somebody can come and say, I've got this, and somebody's got a whole set of tools that they can say, right, we'll do that, and that, and we'll go in, rather than, well, I'm not sure. I'll give you some reflexology. Maybe that'll clear it. But of course it may not,
Right. No, I love that. So the upper, middle, and higher.
So upper, middle, and lower.
Oh, sorry. Upper, middle, lower. I love that, to kind of put it in a more left brain compartmentalized thing, because I try to, with each person that I take, I try to gauge where they are, and maybe to someone, they may not be ready for something. So I may just tell them I think they're beautiful, and that might be where they're at, they just need to know that. And for someone else, it might be like, all right, let's do some magic. And I start working with the energy all around them, and we shift and move and translate. And pretty soon we're speaking in a different language to each other, and that's to the extreme, at least that I've experienced. So I do that personally, but what I'd love is for like more people to gather to create this specific work, like this work. Really, it would be a work, Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I love the word magic, actually, because my passion is really for magic. I've trained in all kinds of magical systems, shamanism, Wicca, and the whole New Age, you create your own reality thing. And this is one of the things I've been trying out for many years. And I've realized that our whole reality is a reflection of our inner energy system. And it's amazing the kind of miracles and synchronicities that you can create. And one of my passions, it sounds like yours as well, Aurelia, is to bring people together in group scenarios and help people co-create a higher kind of destiny timeline. So I was doing it on Sunday. I run a group called Dream Your Year into Being. And so we had a load of people just kind of, because if you've got a group of energy, actually manifestation's so much easier in groups nowadays, because we are in this age of Aquarius, which is a group energy. It's not about the old age of Pisces, which was kind of the guru comes along and tells you how to do it. Now the groups are co-creating themselves, and I see myself as just a facilitator, not a kind of teacher as such. I'm just kind of guiding them to release their own power, and boom, kaboom, off it goes.
I love it. It. So, like, sometimes people have trigger words, like the word psychic, the word mysticism, the word, there's so many different words that people become triggered. And so when I went to write the book, it was kind of simplified into light and dark. And I even challenged my own, intuition or higher power, and said, wait, but we've got to explain it a little more. But the closer I got, the more it became actually quite simple about light and dark. But what I want to understand more is, how do I explain to people that frequency is light? How would you do that?
Frequency is light.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I think, my mother, when I first started talking about energy, she said to me, do you mean my gas bill? What are you talking about? She was like totally kind of confused. So I realized if I was talking to somebody like my mother, I wouldn't really use the word energy, or I would use the kind of, maybe some, like most people, for example, in the corporate kind of setting, wouldn't really get energy, but they'll get inspiration. They'll get kind of like high vibe, there's certain words that they would accept, that they might not accept intuition, but they will accept gut instinct. So I think it's a question of language. But for people who are kind of more open and new age, this kind of idea that frequency is light. I mean, Tesla, the amazing inventor in the 1920s, said if you want to, I think he has some great quotes about frequency and vibration. If you want to understand the nature of reality, just think in terms of frequency and vibration. He had these kind of ideas, and he discovered in the 1920s a way of giving free energy to the whole planet. And this was when the kind of darker forces closed in on him and said, no, we're not going to do that. And he had all these patents blocked and his lab smashed. So, but frequency is the key to everything. And if I was in front of somebody who didn't really understand it, I would just talk in terms of joy. So how much joy can you really tolerate? How much love or intimacy can you tolerate? And there are some people that clearly can only tolerate a certain amount of joy before they go, this is too joyful, I've got to get out of here. Really, I used to run alternatives. We had a volunteer team there, and when I first took it over, it felt a bit like a therapy group, and so I thought, well, how do we shift this without saying we like you, we don't like you? So what we did was decided behind the scenes to just shift the energy of joy in the group, and we knew that people who were not up for it would just jump ship. And that's what happened. We just we got people in who just had a high frequency of joy, and slowly the therapy cases kind of said, this is not much fun anymore. I can't talk about my problems. I'm out of here. Okay. So, some people might not get it, but experientially, a lot of people know, hey, this is a high frequency group. There's a lot of joy here. This is a kind of more depressive, let's talk about our problems and just, mope around type of group. So right. I think it's all a question of language, really.
Yeah. It's easy sometimes for me personally to get caught up in the mental and to try to, I just kind of stay there, and it's because it can be kind of fun even. But I notice that I don't do very well staying balanced when I'm always there. And the closer I get to being higher frequency, the more I realize I actually need to leave my mind quite often. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, the mind can kind of freak out by, if you think of when we talk about male, female, if you think of, let's say the heart is more feminine and the mind more masculine, if you've been brought up in an education system that says mind is the kind of, rational and should be the guiding force in our lives. And if we kind of open up to the heart, the mind kind of freak out. And, you see this kind of polarization going on in groups where the kind of more rational people kind of start judging the more kind of heart-centered people or touchy-feely types. But really this kind of alchemy I'm talking about is where the heart and mind do not polarize. They start actually working together, that the kind of left and right brains kind of start unifying. So it's not that the logical mind starts to try to control the intuition or freak out or have to kind of numb out or disappear for you to function. I think what I've been really working on is that how can my heart and mind work as one, where my mind is not discounted or disowned. So I have a strong logical mind. I have a very strong heart connection, but it's this constant balancing of the two, because there are times where my mind tries to get a little bit too analytical and too kind of, this is the structure. And then my girlfriend says to me, you're thinking too much, come in, your heart, breathe. And I go, oh yeah, thank you for the reminder. So it's great. Other people can help as well, of course.
Right.
Yeah,
I like that too. Yeah, it kind of, I believe one of the reasons we're together is because we can help assist each other in this whole shifting and transforming and being in that higher state. I had the thought, maybe when it gets, because we're going to get close to the middle, or we'll take a little break soon here, but I'd love us to discuss, and thank you for doing this, because I know it's late there in London, but this just is just so exciting and fun for me. But is to talk about incentives. Why would people want to wake up? We've covered it a little bit, but maybe we can talk about some personal experiences or reasons or why they would even want to. Because I'm sitting here, and quite often I actually hear my siblings, my family, and some friends kind of what they would say. They would challenge me. They would say, well, why would you do that? Or what's the purpose? Or, definitely this planet is quite shame-based. There's a lot of shame going on. But the more you wake up and you see these things, honestly, saying the word wake up sounds shaming even in itself. It's almost like saying they're just asleep. And I don't think we mean that. I think we mean we're just talking about opening your eyes a little more. And that's still not a put down. It's more like you're higher frequency. There you go. And it's not, see what I mean? It's like still sounds almost like I'm shaming those that aren't. How would you say it?
Well, I do think we do fall asleep. I think we come into this world as kind of high frequency beings, most of us, and then we enter into families which may not be like that, and they're in the world making a living and getting by, and and here's a high level frequency bundle, and how are we going to manage this, and then there goes the educational system and other systems that really, in a way, maybe unintentionally do put those little high frequency beings to sleep, because me and my high frequency joy, my kind of inner world explorations are not accepted. So I've just got to kind of, get a bit more left brain, get a little bit more sensible, get a little bit more, all these things, which is really coping in this 3D world. And so there's other parts of us which are kind of like want to do something else, are kind of put to one side. So in a way, I do see it as a kind of sleeping. It's not like we completely fall asleep, but it's almost like parts of us fall asleep, and it's only later those parts start shaking the cage, going, hey, you've forgotten about me, I want to come back, and back in your life. And an awakening for some people is a whole creativity explosion. For some people it might be a sexual energy explosion, or a love explosion, or there are energies that want us to not just be sensible and knuckle down and work and raise kids. They may want something else. I don't believe our higher self or soul wants us just to have a lovely house, a big swimming pool, and 3 cars. It's not interested in that. It's not interested in acquisition. It's interested in something else, which maybe we can talk about later. But I did write a book on the whole subject of awakening, because I went through a very, very difficult awakening in 2010 to 2015. It wasn't an easy one, and I discovered that there are different paths to awakening, and some of them are easy, some of them are kind of semi-difficult, and some of them are super difficult.
Okay. Now that is another good way to compartmentalize it, and because sometimes when I'm doing healing work with people, I don't know how to translate or give to them. This isn't always going to be painful like this. It's like it's just kind of a trudging process at times. But back to what I was saying a little bit earlier with the fact that there's a lot of shame. I think that someone says, well, you think you're special because you you think you're different or more. And I'd say, no, that's not it. But when I give myself permission to be who I am, I give others permission to be who they are. And that's my intention in that is wanting to kind of be that higher frequency, walk in and be in that state. And then those around me, it really is a science. It's like it's almost like they can't help it to some degree to wake up to a higher state just by being near it. Yeah.
I think that, this whole special thing is one of those ego traps, really. And anyone who's a healer or a teacher, I know myself that anytime I get a little twinge of, oh, that was really good, I did such a great job, or look at me, I created such a great event, and all these people, or when people start loving you, sending me messages going, oh, you transformed my life, all this kind of stuff, And I part of me goes, that's great, because these people had a shift. But the other part of me that wants to take it from me, going, I did that. Then that's the kind of specialist trap, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it is. It is a trap because it puts you in a lower state, really. And then all of a sudden, why can't I keep this up? What's going on? Well, because it was... Well, I was going to say the words out of integrity, but that's not necessarily it, because maybe a lower belief system. One thing that this group I was involved with, some call it a Templar group, was involved with, was that one thing they challenged me on was my belief that there was such thing as how do I explain this? They said, what if that belief is just a lower belief instead of it being a lie? And I thought, okay, let me research that in my mind and go over that. And I thought, there are things that are just flat out lies on this planet. But then there are things that maybe it's just a lower belief. And a lot of people get in these debates and conversations and fights. And I think, yeah, you guys are thinking the same thing. You're just talking in a different language. And one of you has a lower belief and one has a little bit higher belief. And just look at it. What do you think about that? Do you think there is such a thing as like ultimate deception? Like there is like a total deception?
Well, I think truth is a collective agreement, isn't it? That we kind of buy into. And one of the things that my grandchildren are going through, for example, is this kind of, Walt Disney phase where they're looking at all these princesses and going, wow, am I a princess? Can I do that? And then there's a kind of waking up to something else where they go, well, actually, when I look at my family, I realize, I'm not a princess. And as we kind of wake up to more light, there's,
So the music's coming on because it's time for a break, and then we'll be back in a few minutes.
Okay.
Okay, see you in a bit.
Okay.
I like very much
radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
Are you feeling embarrassed and stuck because you can't focus or concentrate? I have a confession to make. I spent years unable to think clearly, like I was in a fog. I was going through the motions, running my companies, and I hated feeling groggy and mentally sluggish. I couldn't get ahead like this. It's no secret the powers that be want us dumbed down. Chemicals, fluoride, our brains are under siege, and we are experiencing lower IQs. But now there's a weapon to fight back and win. Introducing DNA Evolve, a revolutionary breakthrough in a category of cognitive enhancers called nootropics. I've been using DNA Evolve and couldn't feel better. For me, it works. It feels great to get things done again and get ahead. Try a free sample for yourself at DNAEvolveSample.com. That's DNAEvolveSample.com. Supplies are limited, so go to DNAEvolveSample.com right now.
Did you know there are 3 million edible food plants on Earth, and none have the nutritional value of the hemp plant? HempUSA.org offers you hemp protein powder. It does not contain chemicals or THC, is non-GMO, and is 100% gluten-free. Hemp protein powder burns fat, builds muscle, contains 53% protein, and feeds the body the nutrients it needs. Call 888-910-4367 and see what our powder, seeds, and oil can do for you. Only at HempUSA.org. HempUSA.org introduces 3 brand new detox formulations of micro plant powder. Brain Fuel for depression, bipolar disorders, and stress. Total Care, anti-cancer agent that cleans the liver and organs and increases memory. Rejuvenate, invigorates and heals the body, mind, and spirit. These products are your alternative to pharmaceuticals. Call 888-910-4367 and like us on Facebook. We ship worldwide. Only at HempUSA.org.
We all know that they're not telling us the truth. So stand up for your rights, demand the real medicine, and your right to use it and grow it. This is Rick Sensen, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and when you choose to go on it, you think it's real, because that's how powerful our minds are. And the ride goes up and down and round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored, and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride, and we kill those people. The eyes of fear want you to put bigger locks on your door, buy guns, close yourself off. The eyes of love instead see all of us as one. Here's what we can do to change the world right now to a better ride. Take all that money we spend on weapons and defense each year and instead spend it feeding, clothing, and educating the poor of the world, which it would many times over, not one human being excluded, and we can explore space together, both inner and outer, forever in peace.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow. Friendships to flourish with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio@ymail.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs and artillery batteries not included.
No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, no fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio, American Freedom Radio.
From the whisperings of government agencies and the world of secret and sealed records, from the life of extreme clairvoyance, the author of A Light in the Dark, a hypnotherapist and breath practitioner, powerful energy healer. Introducing today's host, seeking to reveal the dark places and ultimately to enhance the light, Aurelia T. Helios, the Lady of Light.
Okay, we are back, and I'm with Steve Nobel, and we're talking about light and dark, which is my favorite subject currently. But go on, Steve, and keep explaining what you were talking about.
Yeah, there was that whole thing about deception and truth and stuff like that, wasn't it, we were talking about?
Yes.
So I think, if you look very practically, you might have someone who is in the military and thinks they're doing a great job. You know, they're defending their country and they're going off to war and they believe wholeheartedly in what they're doing. And then later, afterwards, they may wake up to a different perspective and go, actually, was what I was doing great? Did I do great things? Did I actually help anything? Did I bring peace on earth? So there's a shift from, one level of truth to another. And the same thing could be in, for example, someone who's in a corporation thinking this company is helping the planet and then realizing, hey, maybe we're not helping the planet. So there's these various kind of degrees of wake up and moving from different levels of kind of, you could say, truth or perspective. And I think that's part of the whole awakening process for me, of like people waking up, expanding their point of view, not saying, I'm right, you're wrong, but actually having a much broader perspective of what truth is. And, really there's several billion people on the planet and everyone has a slightly different version of the truth. So I think it's good to be slightly respectful. I don't personally like evangelizing about what I think is true. So I encourage your listeners to take what I've said with a kind of, discerning ear and decide for themselves if anything resonates or not, So
yes.
That's what I would say about that. I think in terms of deception also, there is, if you look at the media, which is hugely influential, when we talk about this deception, you've got to look at media because, and there's a whole lot of things in the media at the moment about fake news, isn't there? Particularly in America, I think. But what is the kind of boundary between fake news and propaganda? Because all media outlets have an agenda, have a point of view that they want to hammer home. And if somebody's reading a particular newspaper or listening to a particular radio station with that kind of point of view, they'll probably tend to listen to it over and over again to get that point of view reinforced from different angles until they think they have the absolute truth on a subject, right? I've got a brother-in-law who thinks he's got the truth on, Brexit, that Britain leaving the EU. He listens to a radio station, he gets it confirmed from several sources, he meets with people that confirm his point of view. So suddenly, he's in this truth zone, and you can't shake him from it, and I don't want to shake him from it. So, I think personally, I don't know what the truth is, but I'm always willing to explore, to expand, to research, to really use also my rational and intuitive minds to know what is the truth, and trying to get a bigger and bigger version of that all the time.
Well, I love that you said your intuitive mind. That is the goal I feel like of my existence is to show people and remind people that they are intuitive, to bring them to that, to assist in them bringing themselves to that higher state. Now, the mission that I and a few other people in a group that I'm a part of have come up with is the goal. Our mission is to enhance the light by igniting each individual flame. And my 14-year-old reminded me, you don't want to ignite their flame. You want to remind them to ignite their flame. Perfect. It's the fact that we all, each of us, have the light within us, and we have that power to connect to that light and then be intuitive and know. You know how many people say to me, it's really weird, but this one thing happened to me and I knew, and I'm always quick to say, it's not weird. It's not weird. It's not weird. That when you know things, that's actually less weird. This is what's weird, is the funky life we're living where we don't know stuff. So like when you can connect to that intuition, like you were talking about, it's not just fun, but I think when I'm intuitive, I feel more joyful. Like you were talking about joy earlier. Yeah. There's that place of joy. So one thing I said that would be great to discuss in the next little bit, I want to go over a few things. But one is, what is the purpose of waking up to the fact that not only the powers that be aren't really the powers that be on this little world that we live on, but that we also have more, quote, power than we think we have? What is an incentive? Like, why would people want to? What do you think?
Why would they want to wake up?
Yeah.
I think it's almost like it's not that they want to. It's almost like they feel they have no choice. It becomes as I think the awakening process is kind of like you're living one reality, and then slowly that reality becomes more uncomfortable. You don't know why. It's a bit confusing. You know, that was certainly the case for me. And a lot of people I've spoken to, suddenly, I'm living this life, I'm with this person, I'm married or in this job, and suddenly this life doesn't seem to fit me anymore. I'm not really happy, I'm discontented. But why? Everything seems to be all right. My partner seems to care for me, and, all the boxes are ticked, but I still feel something's missing or something's not right. And, for me, there's a kind of exploration, a little bit like counseling or coaching and various things. And then there's a kind of waking up to a realization that something might need to shift. There's something, some people call it a soul's calling or something. And I kind of, in my life, I've been through a number of transitions where, I had one life and then another part of me was calling me to something else. And in that calling, there's always a resistance. I'm going, I'm not going to give up this marriage, this job, this life because some weird yearning inside of me is kind of unhappy about it. But the more I found in myself I resisted that calling, the more unhappier I got. And if you resist the soul's calling, I believe, eventually, and particularly in this age where there's more light coming on the planet, you'll find that resistance has consequences. It could be that your life doesn't work in the same way anymore. It could be that weird stuff starts happening to you, like weird accidents or weird illnesses. Or, when I was resisting my transition in 2010, I had a great life. I was working in a job in this alternatives event managing place where I was meeting great people like Deepak Chopra, Eckhart Tolle, Byron Katie, all these spiritual teachers. This is a job that I dreamt of years before, and I created it. Cool. I was in love and living with a person that I really wanted to be with. And we were in a home that we loved, and we had this kind of life. So I thought to myself, why would I want to get rid of this life and go off and do something else? But the more I resisted it, the more iller I got, until eventually I hit the brick wall. I just kind of had a kind of meltdown, and my whole life started to implode. And so I went through this very difficult transition. So it's not that we want to do it. I think actually a part of us resists our soul's calling, but there's another part that really, if it gets stronger, you can resist all you like, but that part's going to drag you kicking and screaming in a direction you're meant to be going in. Yeah.
I like that. Yes. It feels familiar and similar to my own. You get taught these things and trained and led along the way. And then when you start feeling like you're going against the grain of some sort, and you question it going, wait, isn't this what you're supposed to? Isn't this the best thing? Isn't this the right thing? And what's interesting for me is that I'm now looking at the exposures to some of these groups and the targeting that my family received in some ways as a gift, even though, there's still that part that sucked and was hard. It was a gift in the fact that I learned so much, and that it required me to look for answers. And in finding these answers, I found more so-called truth, light, that brought me to higher states. And now I feel like I'm walking this earth with a purpose, and I'm not wondering where to go and what to do, but that there is so much more. But then I can hear the question, what do you mean? What more of what? What do you think?
Yeah, I know. A lot of people are kind of, the ones I meet are kind of in a waking up stage, feeling confused about, if I give up this corporate job, if I give up this relationship, then what? What's the guarantee, that I'm going to be happy or I'm going to be okay, and it's like, I can't give you a guarantee, but I can tell you that if you stay where you are, you're not going to be any happier. In fact, it's probably going to get worse for you. And eventually, in NLP and most coaching or personal development paths, they say motivation comes in two ways, the carrot and the stick, inspiration or desperation. And yes, sure, some people will be inspired to change their life. They get the kind of inspiration and they're off, But usually a lot of people actually are more moved by desperation, pain. It gets too painful. They have to jump out of the fire. And I think the majority of people are like that. And the other thing about that is the bigger the soul mission, I find, the bigger the kind of, the step you need to take, the bigger the resistance usually is there. And that's natural. And it's not something to fight. The resistance is something to embrace, because you don't want to force through any fears or anxieties. They're there for a reason. We just need to embrace them. And sometimes those fears and anxieties are worth listening to, I've met people who've launched themselves out into the void and have discounted the kind of fear. No, I'm not listening to my fear. I'm just going to leap out. And I don't think that's a great path either. I think if you embrace the fear, Susan Jeffers' idea, she wrote a great book. Feel the fear and do it anyway. I mean, that's a great idea.
Yes.
I've met Susan Jeffers many times in London when she came over from the States. She's not here anymore. She's passed over, but it's a great book on how to deal with fear, anxiety, stepping out of the familiarity zone.
What's the name of the book again?
Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Feel the fear and do it anyway. Okay, I'll look that up. That sounds lovely.
Classic, yeah.
Okay, that's in my library now. So, one of my studies is the matrix of the brain, because energetically I can look in and see people's brains, and I can see that at birth something happened that blew them, then there was a discord or a disconnect inside of the brain, and then they're walking this planet with this disconnect, and what can we do to get those pieces back together, and how can we bring it to the next level, or open their eyes, or wake them up and bring them to that state where they can receive that higher inspiration, light, and ultimate joy. And we talked a little bit about the healing work. That healing work is vital to it, because I don't think healing work is needed because people are broken, really. It's because they just have forgotten, and so it's just there to remind them who they are capable of being and what their duty and their responsibility on this realm is. And that as they remember this, they're going to fall into joy. But I tell you what, I think one of the biggest problems with this decay, so to speak, in our brain is constructs. People hold so tight to constructs. They get taught something happens. For example, someone might say, make a generalization about something, and now they're holding on to that construct, or their religion might have taught them, or some politic might have trained them or brought them to this place, and now they're stuck because they're holding on to that construct. And I know, right? My favorite people are people that keep debunking them and challenging them. And I have a friend who I just appreciate so much who constantly is trying to, I say he's a soldier of dismantling the constructs for other people. And I love it. Because when we challenge those constructs in our brain, then we stop resisting. What are your, embellish on that?
Yeah, the constructs. Well, some people go into very rigid systems like religion. I was in the Catholic Church for 7 years. It's quite a rigid system, and people go into that because there's a level of safety in it. They a level of certainty. They know what reality is. This is the way things are. Bad people go to hell, good people go to heaven, and all this kind of thing. And to leave a system like that with all that certainty can be difficult, because if you're leaving it, when I left the system and I was kind of embracing more light, new age things, I was looking around thinking, well, the people I met didn't have quite the same level of certainty as some of these kind of priests had. They were kind of thumping the table going, hell and damn fire and all that. It sounded very kind of convincing, So if you're someone that feels safety in a strong system, coming out into the kind of new world where there's so many different ideas and systems where you're kind of finding your own path can seem to be confusing. And, so it's great, I think, to have some kind of support. So groups like the ones you're thinking of setting up and the ones I do in London are essential, so people can actually get a feel of, oh, okay, I feel I can trust you. I feel I like this group. I feel they're not going to judge me. They're going to I'm loved. I'm held. People are empathic and intuitive, not in a challenging way to look at all my faults, but in a way that kind of brings out my light. So when I started leaving those old paradigms, I kind of signed up for a very intense meditation course, which gave me such profound experiences, and I began to find that those experiences were something I had faith in. So I needed, I needed something to have faith in, so I could move away from the old systems to something else. So it's very hard for somebody to move from a rigid system into nothing. Certainly at the beginning, anyway. It's better to go from a rigid system to a less rigid, more supportive system. Right. And that's my suggestion. Totally. So if you've got somebody who's evangelical Christian, being very, very kind of held in that, and suddenly is out in the open, they probably want some other support to help them move forward.
Right. I find that some people, because I'm so excited, I'll speak to them and they'll look at me like I'm an alien, truly. Like, you are speaking a language I have no idea. And I just want to squeeze them and say, no, you want this. I promise you do. You really do. Yeah. But I agree with you that there are steps, and it's really, you have to take your psyche in consideration. You have to, recognize that it's held on to these things for a long time. And so, but also it can be extremely rewarding and fun to start challenging some of those constructs. It can be a really fun journey. And so, going back to the feminine a little bit, one of the attributes of the feminine is, living in a very, I call it the organic flow. And that is the serendipity kind of things, and trusting and allowing and kind of seeing things in just kind of letting things fall into place and not finding that you have to have a structure or a construct for it. And I think that's what is needed right now, is remembering that when you're in that higher vibration, there's no need to force or control. When you allow, everything just slips right where it needs to go. Yeah.
The next step becomes obvious, is what they say in Taoism, in that idea of the flow or the way. What breaks it is people who overthink everything, because we are a culture that creates this kind of monster of a left brain, isn't it? This rational brain. And in workshops, people are kind of, I did a workshop recently, and someone said, what about intuition? So I did some exercises around kind of martial arts ones where two partners, one leads and the other has to follow, like just hand movements. And I say, don't look at the hands, look at the eyes. Do not look at the hands, but you have to follow. And if you're thinking about it, you can see some people who can't do it. And I say, stop thinking, feel it, and you can do it. And then the other exercise will be where one person closes their eyes and has to follow the hands of the other. And again, if you're thinking about it, there's no way you're going to do it. But if you're not, you can feel that flow. And it's a great experience for a lot of people to feel, wow, how did I do that? You know, when they open their eyes, they look at the hands and say, somehow when I trusted it and went with the feeling. And intuition really is the more connected you are to your physical body, to your emotional body, the more intuitive you're likely to be. The more connected you are to the head, which is kind of, your head with the body attached. The intuition is going to be something you're going to try and work out with your head, and that's never going to work. So the flow is an experience, and it's really something I guess you would encourage people to do. I encourage people to do it every day. For myself as a practice, for example, I had a problem when I was working in a kind of NLP company, and we had an office which we really needed to move from, and I set the kind of intention to move to an office 3 times as big for a third or a half as the price in an area which is very green and and beautiful. And I thought, well, that's quite a heavy kind of way out there intention, but let's give it a go. And I kind of waited, because there's a thing I think with setting those kind of goals that it comes to you. You can't go looking for it. And I waited for a few days, and then for a number of synchronicity, I was led to the perfect place. And I found out when I went in there that they had an office 3 times as big as the other one for a third of the price, and it was right next to a park. And it was also much closer to my own house, which I was very delighted about. So those kind of things. I mean, when I was in alternatives, we had intentions around connecting with Deepak Chopra and all these kind of people. And the intention and following the intuition always led us through people, through synchronicity, to finding a way to connect and getting those people over. So I found, and I guess people listening have to put this into their own practice, and just feeling, for example, a great beginning intuition practice would be to break up your natural rhythm and natural flow to allow something else in. So, for example, if you're someone who goes to the same restaurant at work every single day, then decide, okay, I'm not going to go to that restaurant. I'm going to allow myself to be led somewhere else, and allowing your feeling to take you somewhere. This is kind of a bit of a challenge for some people. It breaks up you've got to break up the old patterns to allow something new to come in. So that's just a very easy thing. Or instead of going the same way to work every day, go a different way, and it allows for a whole different experience to come in. So it's like breaking up those rigid kind of constructs you talked about to allow some new light to come in.
Oh, that's such a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that. That's a good way to disrupt that and let that light in.
You've got to disrupt the old pattern, otherwise no new pattern can come in, really.
No new pattern. And how many people are just bored and they don't even know why? They're just bored. And my belief is that many of them are hungry. They're like, okay, wait, there's got to be more to this. There's something else than just getting a job, getting a nice house, and making sure I've got my family going. And there's something more. And like as you continue to wake up, I think where people go, oh, there's this and there's that and there's all these concepts. And, it's funny in the conspiracy world, I noticed this. There's a lot of people that are frustrated with the new age world, right? Yeah. And one of my friends even said today, she said, I can't stand the new agers. They don't accept that it's actually old age.
Right.
And that's true. And I think what's happening is it's all semantics again, but there's a group of people rising up saying, let's do this. This is exciting. And they're calling it new. It's refreshing. When a lot of this stuff is just wisdom that has always been here, but that we're remembering, and the frequency is rising. So earlier I asked you, how would you summarize the word frequency for those that had heard it for the first time? What would you say? And you said you don't have anything. Do you have anything yet?
Well, yeah, I suppose it's depending who's asking the question. But, for most people, I would talk about like joy as a frequency, love as a frequency. And the more you're kind of open to higher frequencies, usually the more sensitive you get. The trouble is people who are not kind of really open are not very sensitive. So they can work in very dense environments, very heavy environments. Mm-hmm. They can go into areas where there's a lot of anger, a lot of kind of hidden dynamics. And they can say, I can't feel anything. But the moment you start opening up to energies and frequency and you start waking up, you become more sensitive. And this is a common thing, that people who are waking up become increasingly sensitive to, you could say lower frequency zones. And if somebody said to me, well, what is a lower frequency zone? I say, well, somebody where there's a lot of anger, whether expressed or especially if it's not expressed, a lot of kind of resentment, a lot of disappointment, a lot of hidden dynamics. The more hidden a frequency, like imagine anger is hidden in a group, the more uncomfortable, sensitive people are going to feel, because, it's better to be out in the open and expressed. At least it has an outlet. But families are also like that. Families are kind of, these kind of constructs of energy which have got lots of hidden dynamics in them, hidden, things from, ancestral stuff that comes handed down. And so people who are sensitive are going to feel that's almost becomes like toxic, and they won't be able to stay there for very long. They have to leave. So to a kind of somebody who's spiritual or awakened, you won't have to really explain frequency, because they get it. Their whole body goes, I can't tolerate this person, and just by standing in their energy field, I feel yuck. Or going into this building, I feel just horrible. I just feel like my skin itches. Whereas someone who's not kind of open to frequency go, well, I don't see the problem. I go and have a beer at lunchtime, I'm fine, So it depends who you're talking with. Frequency to somebody who's really not sensitive, I would say, in terms of, how much joy are you having in your life? Because joy is a frequency. How much love, how much opportunity, how much possibility, how much limitation are you having? Because limitation is a certain kind of squashing of frequency. And I would have to talk in those terms, particularly if I'm coaching someone. But somebody who's sensitive, I could say, like, you can talk about hidden dynamics or thought forms, or even you might have even places which are riddled with discarnate energies, energies which you can't see, which earthbound souls, or all kinds of stuff. Or imagine being in a place where, there was kind of a battle that went on and thousands of people were slaughtered, 100 years ago. That energy would be vibrating there, and sensitive people would definitely feel it. I've been on a few battlefields myself, and you can definitely feel these kind of energies where someone who's not open will go, well, I don't feel anything. I guess those kind of people. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure speaking with you, because I feel like your frequency is similar to mine, and so it's smooth, and like sometimes when I'm talking with someone, it feels like I'm trying to translate or either, trying to figure out how to speak with their, sometimes there's like that disconnect or discord, but I feel like everything we're saying is like in that frequency. So yeah, no, the more in tune you become, I think the more you sense those vibrations and can tell where they're coming from, what they're about. Some people have said, how could you speak up about these groups? Aren't you scared? Well, I kind of trust the metaphysical a lot, and I've got quite a few people on my side who are helping me. And since I know that this realm is really not third dimension, but thinks it is, then I know that I'm pretty safe. And so that doesn't mean I'm not aware and not trying to be aware and always conscious, but that that it's like you said, it's not something to sit and stress about, because that feeds it. And so, I hear kind of, like I said, some maybe friends, family members that might say, well, how could you believe this or not believe that or challenge that? Well, I go back to this book that I'm reading right now called Spiritual Journeys by Howard Beatty. And it's funny I'm plugging a book that I've only read some of it, but I went to a workshop and he was teaching, and he's probably he's quite old and just kind of a quiet, solid man. And I said, when you put people into a deep state, because he's a hypnotherapist and he's training people to put people in a deep state through hypnotherapy. I said, when you do this and you get people to the Akashic record, is it consistent? Is the information and the knowledge that you find consistent? He said, yes, very strong. Yes. You could feel it in the room. And that just answered so many things for me, because sometimes people are like, well, if you're not following this one thing or you're not following that rule, how can you be okay? And you know what I realized? Guess what my core belief is that the Akashic has it, and that's where I want to be. I want to be in that state of the knowing of all. And when I'm in that state, I feel like that's when I'm in alignment to God.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I'd say, talking about frequencies and what you mentioned about these groups, that it's pretty safe nowadays in most parts of the world, certainly in America and Britain, to shine your light as brightly as you wish. You're not going to get burned for it anymore. You're not going to be hung for it. You know, there are still some dark spots in the world where it's not entirely safe to shine your light. You know, there are places where if you speak out, you know, culturally, you can get slammed or killed for it. You know, there are places like that. But America and Britain is definitely not those places. The best safety anyone can have is to raise their frequency as high as possible. Now, just to say about that, by doing that, that will attract a certain amount of attention on the astral plane. You know, once you start raising your light, it does kind of, people do see it, and it's almost like moths to the flame, right? So you might attract some kind of weird entity or energy stuff, but it's nothing to worry about, because the higher your frequency, you know, they can't get in, and they're very easy to clear out, these kind of things. But there is a cultural belief that's very, very deep, because for the last 10,000 years on this planet, we've gone through a phase where the dark has been in control and has been stronger than the light. You know, a lot of spiritual teachers, most spiritual teachers on the planet have been killed. You know, if you think of the life of Jesus Christ, he came on, did his mission, and then the darker forces came in and said, we're going to stop you, basically. You're not going to continue. And they got rid of him. So there's this kind of belief for a lot of people who've been through this kind of reincarnational cycle on the planet that actually, you know, is it safe to shine my light? Because I don't think so, because in those lifetimes in my unconscious that I can vaguely remember, I was killed in not very nice ways. And so when a lot of people wake up, one of the things they come to is this fear about shining their light. And it's very common. I see it in a lot of people. And can I speak my truth? Is it okay to speak my truth? Is it okay to do what I want to do? Is it okay to shine brightly on the astral plane? The answer is yes, but okay. And it's quite strong in a lot of people. And it's worth facing it, because there is no fighting the dark. We don't fight the dark. We're here to shine our light. The world is transforming. The dark are on their way out. And I meet a lot of people who are very angry with the dark, who want to fight the dark. I met a young man actually who was a client, and he came up very practically against the dark forces on this plane, and he was hounded by them and eventually almost had a nervous breakdown. This was kind of dark forces through intelligence services. I can't go into the details, but basically he was so angry he wanted to fight back and get back at the dark. And he contacted me because I mentioned about the Illuminati and dark forces. And my advice to him and to anybody else like him was, do not fight the dark. And he kind of looked at me like, what? Do not fight the dark? What do you mean? I said, do not fight the dark. You can't beat them at their own game. As soon as you enter that dojo, you're lost. We're not here to go and fight.
When you fight them, you join them. When you fight them, you join them.
Yeah, and most people go, well, how do I do it then? And you go, you know, turn away from, he wanted to create a whole social media network that was kind of exposing the dark. And I'm going, no, you don't need to do that. It's fine. Just do what you're here to do. Recover, gain your strength, shine your light, find where your soul wants you to go. And he kind of took my advice, because he was going to spend thousands of pounds, I think, on this network. And I didn't feel it really was his soul calling. He was doing it out of anger and of frustration and fear, you know, and about what happened to him. And so I encourage anybody, do not fight the dark. You're here to shine your light. That doesn't mean don't be aware of what the dark is up to. They're up to all kinds of weird antics. But if you're furious and angry with them or afraid of them, there's still Akashic stuff to be cleared, because you're still resonating with other lifetime memories of being smashed and executed and hung, drawn and quartered and all that kind of thing, which are very, very deep, painful memories. And these things do come up when the light is activated, and they're there to be cleared. We don't go through them as a kind of, I'm going to re-traumatize myself. But once they're cleared, we can look at the dark and go, you have no power over me, actually, and I'm going to do what I'm here to do, and I'm going to speak what I need to speak, and I'm going to meet who I need to meet, and I'm not going to worry about you. I don't know if you've seen that film, The Labyrinth, with David Bowie. Do you remember that film?
Yep.
And there's a kind of, she goes through this whole thing about the Goblin King has stolen a baby, she's going to get back at him, and in the end the Goblin King said, I only did it out of love for you, and she said, you have no power over me, and the whole thing exploded. As soon as she realized he had no power, but really realized, the whole reality shattered, and she was back where she wanted to be.
Right.
And we're in this kind of game of the dark has no power, but we don't completely know it for sure. And we're putting our toe in the water going, is it okay if I shine? Are they going to come knocking at my door and put a black bag over my head or something? And that's not going to happen.
Well, it is a war, but it's a different war than we've ever had, at least on this dimension. And that it can't be fought and won the same way. And so, like, in the book, I talk about being a light soldier or a light warrior or a light advocate. And these things are kind of translating it into a more feminine kind of role. And that is more of the loving and the tender and those kind of things that are needed to be a part of this war. And you know, people have a negative connotation of the word war. I don't. And so that's why I'm able to speak it like that. But that a war is like you embrace the fact that there is something going on, that there is something you can do about it. And being, I think of an example of my friend recently that we were working with, who works and like constantly has about 100 clients a week, at trying to clear people's cords. He's a chiropractor, but he works on clearing people's cords. And he does it all day, every day. And then people leave feeling better, feeling more clear. And like, that's a perfect example of a light soldier. I mean, that's the war we're in right there. And what's he doing? Is he sitting and focusing on what to be afraid of and what he should and shouldn't be doing? No, he's working on doing that. And he loves it. He said he loves it. He would love more people. I'm like, you have 100 clients a week and you want more? He said, yeah, I feel great when I'm doing it. And I think the reason he feels great when he's doing it is because he's doing his work. He's doing the work. Yeah. But so I just got a question over this chat thing that said, what are ways that you can raise your frequency? My goodness, we could probably spend 2 more hours talking about that, but how would you summarize that?
That's very easy, really. You know, of course, there are different ways of doing it, but I would say for me personally, I love talking to like-minded people. That raises my frequency. Mm-hmm. I like going to beautiful places. I like listening to music. I like traveling. I like stepping out of my comfort zone in a way that feels, you know, not too far out, but, you know, enough that feels, wow, that's a bit of an adventure. Having an adventure. I love being hugged. I love, you know, being in love. I love, you know, making love. I love smelling the flowers. I love running and being in my body. I love feeling my emotions fully. I love writing, expressing my truth, and on and on and on and on and on. You know, we've all got different ways, but I think, you know, for most people, it should be a kind of holistic way of include the body, yoga, Tai Chi, walking in parks, you know, being out in nature, mountains, sea, emotions, feeling the whole range of them. And there might be some emotions which are kind of harder to get to, you know, sing them out, write them out, get in touch with the emotions. Expand the mind, get inspired, you know, do new things. There are so many ways. And of course, there are light practices. There are light meditations you can do. I've got loads on my website that are designed to raise frequency just by, you know, listening and being immersed in these kind of transmission baths. But, you know, it could be anything really, couldn't it? You know, buying someone a bunch of flowers, or there's a million very practical ways and very spiritual ways. There's a whole spectrum of things. You know, what makes you feel great? Think about that, really.
That is, I love that. I love that you put that all. And again, your website is thesoulmatrix.com. And I love that you've offering all these things for people that bring them into that higher state. There's, you know, you mentioned all those, and I love so many of those. One thing is eating and choosing to take everything into your body that is as high vibration as you can is sometimes not the easy choice in this planet, but I think that it is definitely worthwhile if you want to help wake up your third eye. So
yeah, for sure.
I'm a pretty big advocate on that. So one of the things you have on your website is embracing the 5-dimension global shift, which we've been kind of talking about, but we've got about 20 minutes left, 15, 20, let's go into that.
Okay, the global shift. Well, what a lot of people who are waking up are experiencing are living in 2 worlds, I think. And one world is the conventional world we see all around us, a bit like The Matrix, isn't it, the film? And the other world is this new world of light, of kind of, angelic forces, of spirit guides, of ascended masters, of, all kinds of resources of energy in the earth, and, this kind of akashic field that we can kind of feel, and, go traveling in the inner planes, and all kinds of healing techniques. So there are these two worlds, and most people who are waking up have a foot in both worlds. There's the ordinary world, and there's this kind of more higher frequency world. And the world we're heading for, I think, in this period of transition, there's a clearing out of the dark. There's a clearing out of the old mentality, which is really, if you look at the way the world's been run, it's like almost like we've given a bunch of adolescent kids control who want to go and fight and grab things, and it's like, really? That's not the way I think the world's going to be run in about 20 to 30 or 40 years' time. This is the kind of classic golden age, new age kind of ideology, but we're seeing the kind of worst of the old mentality, which has led us into war, pollution, destruction of the environment, destruction of communities, on and on and on and on, the problems. What this kind of new frequency is doing, very practically, is bringing people in the world who have come in with new solutions to the old problems. And one of the things I look out on Facebook and social media is a lot of these younger inventors who are coming up with all kinds of ideas of cleaning plastic in the oceans, to bringing new technologies, free energy. And I think technology is exploding alongside the kind of whole spiritual explosion. So the world we're heading for, first and foremost, in the near future, will be a world without war, I believe, which is why we're seeing kind of this kind of endless war where trillions is being spent on war completely crazily. We have to get to the point where it seems so crazy, people go, it's crazy. And so I think that kind of within the next 30 to 40 years, I think we'll see a drastic reduction in that. We're seeing there'll be a big shake-up in a lot of the systems on the planet. Some of these old systems, particularly the financial system, which is one of the key systems, which the financial system is what keeps us in scarcity, what drives war, it's what's destroying the planet. The financial systems is heading for a major reinvention, I believe, which will allow for more light and more possibility in that, because really the financial system keeps a very, very small group of people in extreme wealth, and there are countries that are quite wealthy and countries which are not wealthy, very unequal. There's no cooperation really going on in the world. I think the world we're heading for is one of greater cooperation. There'll be a greater cleanup of the environment. There'll be a greater awareness of the kind of the planet is a sacred gift. There'll be a great awareness of spirituality on the planet. All these things are prophesied in all kinds of prophecies. I mentioned the Book of Revelations, which is the classic Christian one. But there's the Mayan calendar. There's the kind of astrological idea of Pisces to Aquarius. All of them say the same thing. An old age of darkness and spiritual ignorance and material greed is going to go through a difficult period and then lead into a new era of more enlightened way of living on the planet. So how it exactly pans out, I'm not quite sure, but there are a lot of people here like yourself who are kind of leading the way, and there are this vanguard of, this kind of leading group of 0.5% perhaps. But slowly there'll be loads more coming behind. There's a lot of high frequency souls being born on the planet now that are going to help make this shift. So I think even though it's difficult at the moment, I think, by 2030 is where I see the major shift happening. I know it's another, 13 years away, but 13 years in terms of clearing up 10,000 years of darkness is not a lot, is not a lot of time. That's why we need people like yourself who are clearing, and that other guy you mentioned with the 100 clients a day and what I'm doing. We need a lot of people like us that go around and can clear up a lot of this mess quickly, and people who are coming on the planet to clear, help clear practically the environment and help reinvent politics and all kinds of things. Every system on the planet is up for reinvention, I see. And the darker spots on the planet, which a lot of them are kind of in the Middle East at the moment, they will be perhaps the last ones to come along. But I see the kind of West at the moment leading a kind of light revolution. America, there's so many spiritual teachers there, probably more than England, really, much more than England. America's, you got a lot in California and, down San Diego and San Francisco way. There's lots and lots of stuff coming out of America, great stuff, along with the kind of darker, more redneck type of stuff that's going on as well. But I think, 15 years time, our children that are growing up are going to be wanting a very different world than the one we're handing to them.
Yeah, that it's hopeful. You definitely have helped me feel hopeful about what's happening and what's going on, and it does feel right and feel true. And
I wasn't always so hopeful. I did go through a period where I felt I feel the planet's heading for a reset button. But after I went through my own personal transition, cleared out my own stuff, I could look at it more objectively and see it with a kind of different set of eyes. I'm not Pollyanna-like, seeing everything's going to be fine, everything's wonderful, we're all singing and dancing. I am looking at situations like the war in Syria, the situation in Libya. I think it's good to keep an eye on those darker spots, but I do also see the massive wave of light coming out of places like America and also in places like London, which is a great crossroads for spirituality and new thinking. I love the things like TED Talks, that brilliant platforms on the internet now. Great new ideas are coming along. So we have this kind of joint, great platforms and great ideas and great practical inventions and ways of doing things, along with the darker old stuff, which is like, we got to go grab the oil, we got to, protect our currency, we got all this boring old stuff, really.
I love the word boring. I use that a lot, boring. Because it's outdated. It's becoming, like people keep trying to force it and make it happen, and it just doesn't match the frequency anymore. It's old and it stinks. It's boring. But I agree that there is still dark and something, and we need to be aware of it. And we need to continue to ask ourselves, I think that should be a daily thing. What can I do to help the planet today? Not just what can I do to make myself feel good? What can I do to increase my frequency? What can I do to help the planet today? When there was people were voting a few weeks ago, and I admit I was frustrated on social media. I could barely look at it because I just want to say to everybody, this doesn't mean anything. This doesn't matter. This doesn't apply. But I couldn't get that message, and I was like, wait a minute, how's that helping? It's not. So I thought I could meditate and tap in. And so I did. I went into a meditative state on that day, and I received a download, and it was that everybody needs to remember that they are creators. They need to remember this vital piece. Many of us are walking around as in victim mode, not knowing it even. We think we're creators, but what we're doing is regurgitating. We're regurgitating what was being taught to us by a culture, a status quo, a religion, or whatever. But when we see that the ultimate creator, the one infinite creator of this planet and all things, wants to see creation, because it's unboring. There's one way to put it. It's like, what's next? What's new? What's interesting? So when we choose to create and not regurgitate, not only is there joy, but there's an increase of the light on this planet. And when I was working in those groups, I kept hearing, they kept trying to convince me in their mission is to balance. I remember one day I was talking with one of the members of this Templar group, and we were having a debate, and they were saying, we are going to keep you from doing your work because we don't agree with it. And I said, I don't understand this whole thing about balance. They said, well, we're just balancing light and dark. And it just sat with me. And I just kept thinking and balance the light and balance. And then it hit me. We're off balance. We don't need balance. That's a joke. We actually have enough dark. We have plenty of, we're consumed with it. So the goal and the mission should be to enhance the light. And that each of us takes that specific mission and as our own personal duty, and do it in our own unique, creative way. And how do we do that? We tap into the Akashic. And when we do that, we find out, what is my own mission? What is my specific role to enhance the light? How can I do that? I was told through an experience with the channel that as the dark continues to increase, which it does, the light will continue to grow together and become brighter and brighter. And just like the sun, the dark is repelled by the sun. And so we as a beam will continue to unite our forces and to enhance the light. But there are people that are doing great work, but they're missing that piece. This is my opinion and my own plug. They're missing the piece that the enhancing of the light is ultimately the pill, the pill for the cancer. There's a cancer, we need a pill. Well, what do? We need to take something. Well, when we accept that mission to enhance the light, we shift everything, not just within ourselves, but within everyone. And the rest of the mission is the phrase is by igniting each individual flame. And that starts with our own and others. And how we do that is tap into that place. So with the few minutes that we have, what would you say is the best way that people can, and like that they can tap into their own power to enhance the light?
Yeah, once they really start in tapping into their own light, they kind of will come up against eventually with their own kind of akashic dark. So it's not about fighting the dark in the external world, but clearing, as you say, the dark in the akashic. But I think eventually there comes a point of service. I think you mentioned that as well, that it's not about me, my vibration, it's about what I can do for the world, which is why we're also here. And so everyone has their own unique part of service. For some people it might seem very modest, it can be the most basic form of karmic service is raising children, I think, not the most basic, but the most ubiquitous. Everyone on the planet most people go through that kind of karmic service, but there are other forms of service. I know when I was at Alternatives doing these spiritual events, we worked out we touched 100,000 people in 13 years, which I was very proud of.
Wow.
But now I'm kind of doing, and of course those 100,000 will probably touch other people that the ripple goes out. So, But now I'm doing this kind of podcast transmission series, and in 1 year I've had 105,000 plays. So I've kind of increased the amount of people I'm reaching, and so that makes me feel great. When I check all the stats on the website, I can see, actually America's my biggest audience, believe it or not, amazingly.
Mm-hmm. I do believe we rock over here.
You rock over there. My friends across the pond, but they're all being listened. There's also being listened in places like Israel and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and these kind of countries. So this is why I feel, it took me a while to work out what my particular form of service was. And we've always got to work out where it's not that I've got to martyr-like kind of jump into sacrifice and, struggle to help the world. It's where I feel joyful and where my skills are and where I have the energy for. And it doesn't feel like work. It feels like I'm having fun doing it. So, and of course, it took me a while to find my part of service. So, and a lot of people are struggling. What am I here to do? Don't struggle with it. It will become obvious. Just open to the light, clear out your old akashic, and just take the next step. And the next step will become obvious.
I love it. Thank you. And again, thesoulmatrix.com. And it's interesting, not interesting, but it's kind of funny to myself, amusing to me. But when I see people like you, I just feel this huge relief. Like, okay, I don't have to work so hard.
Likewise.
Yeah, Steve is working over there. Okay, good. Yeah, and now I've got another place I can send people to. I have this woman I recently found within the last few weeks. She's doing this thing, her name's Annie Dalter, and she's doing this thing called the Sacred Movement. And she has got women everywhere doing these retreats where they are, she's trying to help them be the goddess that they are, and she's showing them how to do ceremony and connect to the earth and do it through sacred work. So she just got this whole theme of sacred and the sacred movement. I love it. And I just when I met her, I'm like, thank you. Okay, good. We've got that covered in that area. And I love opening my eyes to more and more places or people that are, again, doing these things, shifting the planet, making that movement. And you are awesome. And I hope that we can talk more in the future, that maybe we can do another show even. And I'd love to, I'm going to go look at more of your stuff and download it and do the same thing with, go look at my book more and see what your thoughts are. Cause I'd like to get your feedback, at the website. Like I said, you can get it for free, but my next book is actually going to be Enhance the Light. So that's the title of it, and I'm working on it right now. Yeah. Wow. So yeah. I'd love some ideas. Maybe we can do an interview on what you think would be some ways that we can do it for ourselves, for others, etc., and kind of brainstorm on that. But
yeah, for sure. Well,
yeah.
I mean, it's been a great pleasure, really, talking with you. I've really enjoyed it, and it's about 1:00 in the morning here, but it feels like we've only just got started.
I know, I love it. I could feel that that it's late for you. And again, thank you for that sacrifice for doing this. But when you find like a family member and you're just like, yes, that's what I feel like, like someone that's in your same realm, doing the same work that you're doing. So before, Danny cues in the music, I'm going to finish off with, I'd like to challenge each of you, those that are listening, to do the same thing I asked earlier and to place your hand on your heart. Imagine that this place is connected to the beam, your own beam that's right above your heart, and then imagine a string climbing itself up into your mind, into your brain, and then just to imagine that connecting above you, and connect, and imagine that there is a well of running water coming through your mind down into your heart, and that it goes down through the earth, and that as you continue to search for more truth, you have the opportunity to have this well of living water running through you. Until next time, I'm excited. Next week I'll be talking with another guest, and so go to American Freedom Radio to find out. Thank you.
News and information you can trust. This is American Freedom Radio. Freedom. American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
Are you feeling embarrassed and stuck because you can't focus or concentrate? I have a confession to make. I spent years unable to think clearly, like I was in a fog. I was going through the motions, running my companies, and I hated feeling groggy and mentally sluggish. I couldn't get ahead like this. It's no secret the powers that be want us dumbed down. Chemicals, fluoride, our brains are under siege, and we are experiencing lower IQs. But now there's a weapon to fight back and win. Introducing DNA Evolve, a revolutionary breakthrough in a category of cognitive enhancers called nootropics. I've been using DNA Evolve and couldn't feel better. For me, it works. It feels great to get things done again and get ahead. Try a free sample for yourself at DNAEvolveSample.com. That's DNAEvolveSample.com. Supplies are limited, so go to DNAEvolveSample.com right now.
Nutritious food is real body armor. It builds muscle, burns fat, improves digestion, and feeds the entire body the nutrients it needs. Did you know the U.S. government banned the hemp plant from growing in the United States and classified it as a Schedule I drug to hide it behind the marijuana plant? People have been confused about this plant for over 80 years, and many still don't know what hemp is. So now you know hemp is not marijuana, and marijuana is not hemp. They are different varieties of the same species. HempUSA.org wants the world to know these basic facts and to help people understand that hemp protein powder is the best kept health secret you need to know about. Remember, hemp protein powder contains 53% protein, is gluten-free, anti-inflammatory, non-GMO, and is loaded with nutrients. Call 888-910-4367, 888-910-4367, and see what our powder, seeds, and oil can do for you. Only at HempUSA.org.
This is Rick Simpson, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.
Now, to balance the scale, I'd like to talk about some things that bring us together. Things that point out our similarities instead of our differences. Because that's all you ever hear about in this country is our differences. That's all the media and the politicians are ever talking about, the things that separate us, things that make us different from one another. That's the way the ruling class operates in any society. They try to divide the rest of the people. They keep the lower and the middle classes fighting with each other so that they, the rich, can run off with all the money. Fairly simple thing, happens to work. You know, anything different, that's what they're going to talk about. Race, religion, ethnic and national background, jobs, income, education, social status, sexuality, anything you can do, keep us fighting with each other so that they can keep going to the bank. You know how I describe the economic and social classes in this country? The upper class keeps all of the money, pays none of the taxes. The middle class pays all of the taxes, does all of the work. The poor are there just to scare the middle class.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow, friendships to flourish, with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio@ymail.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs and artillery batteries not included.
No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, no fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio, American Freedom Radio.